So how do you feel about this potential trade here to my right, where the San Francisco 49ers would receive former All-Pro cornerback Patrick Surtain, who received those honors in year 2 after being a first-round pick by Denver out of Alabama, and the Broncos would receive the Niners' first-round pick in this year's draft at 31st overall, a second-round pick, 63rd overall in this draft, and then a third-round pick, 94th overall. How are you feeling about this trade? Now, why are we talking about Patrick Surtain to the Bay? You think about some of the great Niners teams that have won Super Bowls in the past. A lot of them have had top-flight corners and top-flight cornerback duos. The Niners right now have Charvarius Ward. He's going into the final year of his contract, which has ended up being a bargain for San Francisco. Anytime you can get a second-team All-Pro who's making just north of $14 million, that's a win for your organization. The Niners were right in projecting that he would turn into and develop into a really good player. But Bleacher Report suggesting that the Niners could make this move in trading for Patrick Surtain in a list of moves across the NFL that could keep the Kansas City Chiefs away from three-peating. Why would the Niners do it? Well, first of all, Patrick Surtain is a really good young cornerback. He's bordering on elite. He's already made it to 2 Pro Bowls, and he was an All-Pro in his second year in the league. So if you want to say he's elite, you could say that he's elite. What it does give you, an elite cornerback 1 and cornerback 2 tandem. There are few teams across the NFL that would be able to say, we have a player to the likes of Charvarius Ward on one side and Patrick Surtain on the other side. It would become very difficult to throw the ball against this Niners defense, especially under this new defensive coordinator, if the Niners can generate more of a pass rush and more of a pass rush than they did under Steve Wilks. And Ambry Thomas, I think the Niners have lost trust in him. They lost trust in him last year by not playing him at all. And then here in 2023, he wasn't getting any snaps early in the season. And then he struggled in the playoffs after having an overall Pro Football Focus grade of over 70, and he got 1 snap in the Super Bowl, which I didn't like for San Francisco because we saw more from Logan Ryan than we did from Ambry Thomas, and it's not a slight on Logan Ryan, but there's a reason why no teams came calling until the halfway point of the year and why he went unsigned for so long. What this also does is it keeps Deommodore Lenoir in the slot, who I think is going to be a marquee member of this Niners defense moving forward. He's played excellent football since getting drafted out of Oregon in the latter rounds. And for Charvarius Ward, maybe this year you have Ward and Surtain to go all in on a Super Bowl. But if he becomes too expensive, and he plays so well once again where you can't afford him, he's in the final year of his deal, you let an older corner walk at that time, you still have Patrick Surtain, you could move Deommodore Lenoir to the outside if you want to re-sign him, or you could find another corner on the outside who's a little bit cheaper. This gives you a lot of options here. If you trade for Surtain, the only thing that you're losing, a pick in the first, second, and third round. There is a history, too, of the Niners having interest in the player. According to ESPN's Adam Schefter, going into the deadline this year in 2023, the Niners tried to trade for Patrick Surtain. He's made it to those 2 Pro Bowls, All-Pro player, so some really good accolades in his first 3 years in the National Football League. In each of his 3 years, he's never given up a completion percentage of over 60%. And in 50 total games, he has 36 pass breakups to go along with 7 interceptions. A long, rangy, speedy lockdown corner who always is matched up against some of the top-flight wide receivers in the NFL. Now, going back to Charvarius Ward, what is the future of him? Coming off a year in which he was a second-team All-Pro, 84.7 Pro Football Focus grade. That was 5th among all corners in 2023. So if he's looking for a new contract, he could take that to the negotiating table. I'm a top 5 corner. I want top 5 cornerback money. Might be too rich for this Niners front office. The Chiefs barely went his way in the Super Bowl. He allowed 0 yards on 55 coverage snaps. He was targeted just once. And I like Ward as a player. And I would keep him for 2024. He threatens to hold out, that's fine. See if he actually holds out. But when the season comes around, Ward, Surtain, your outside corners, Niners defense could be wreaking havoc. And that's a way that you can beat the Kansas City Chiefs. You get that pass rush, you lock down on the outside, you become very difficult to throw against. That's a good formula for success in trying to get that 6th Lombardi trophy. So how do you feel about this trade? If you didn't answer this already, do so right now. Would you make it? T for trade, P for pass. Niners receive Surtain. Broncos receive a first, second, third round pick. The exact compensation right on the screen right here. Now, today's show is sponsored by PrizePicks, and stay tuned. We're going to take your questions right around the corner. Daily fantasy sports made easy, and this is the largest independently run daily fantasy sports app in North America. You pick 2 or more players. You choose more or less on their projected stats, and if you put $100 into your account, you automatically get $100 back by going to prizepicks.com/CLNS. Use the code CLNS. Coming out of the NBA All-Star break, these are the picks that we really like for the back half of the year, and I'd be shocked if this doesn't hit. Nikola Jokic, more than a half 30-plus point game for the rest of the year. That's the PrizePicks special right now. Hop on that because he's going to drop at least 30 points once. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, more than 2.5 40-plus point games. He's popped off for a lot of those this year. And then LeBron James with the Lakers in that playoff run, more than 9.5 double-doubles, again, from here until the playoffs, the remainder of the regular season. PrizePicks.com/CLNS, code CLNS, for that $100 deposit match. Now let's start to take your questions right here on the show. Mac Daddy, $10 super chat. This team is terrible making trades other than Christian McCaffrey. Do not trade Brandon Ayuk under any circumstances. Never trade a sure thing. Just saying the Carolina Panthers did it, and you look at where it got them. Carolina Panthers are one of the worst organizations in the game, and you never want to follow them as a model for success. If you do, it's a model for failure. I agree. You can't trade Brandon Ayuk under any circumstances. He is worthy of top 10 wide receiver money. Now, I do disagree that the Niners are awful at making trades. Christian McCaffrey has been a fantastic trade. Charles Omenihu was an awesome trade that paid big dividends for a year and a half, and he was a big player in the playoffs in those 2 years. Jordan Willis was a pretty good deal on the margins, who ended up playing a big role for this Niners team. And how about the Jimmy Garoppolo trade? That worked out well. Now, DeForest Buckner, awful trade. Niners decided to keep Eric Armstead over him. That was a mistake. But going back to Ayuk, this is why I think the Niners are going to do everything in their power to keep him. He was a JUCO product, junior college guy, before he went to Arizona State. Niners saw something special in him when he played with the Sun Devils. That's why they drafted him 25th overall in the 2020 draft. And Kyle Shanahan that night, that was the COVID year, he wasn't at the team facility, he was at the crib. He was pumped about that draft selection. And the Niners saw route running, vertical speed, dynamic playmaking, big wingspan. That allows him to win 50-50 balls. They invested the first round pick in him, and then they invested a lot into his development, hoping that at some point he would become a wide receiver 1. What did he do this year? He became a wide receiver 1. Second team All-Pro, great weapon for Brock Purdy. Now what's going on right now, I believe, is being used as leverage by Ayuk and his camp to leverage a hefty contract. The only way I think that Ayuk is not re-signed by San Francisco is if he asks out. Big Bo, $2 super chat. Doesn't the cap space from last year carry over? Yes, it does. And we'll see what the cap space for all NFL teams is. It was originally slated to be $243 million. Mike Florio reporting it could be closer to $250 million. As of right now, the Niners are under $600,000 in cap space, With these 4 moves, though, they can clear up about $55 million if they restructure the contract for Trent Williams, Deebo Samuel, Eric Armstead, and give Fred Warner a contract extension. Pretty easy to do, in my opinion. Calvin, $5 super chat. Re-sign Azeez Al-Shire as Dre Greenlaw is down. Thank you for the excellent content. I appreciate that compliment. And I'm going to talk about Azeez Al-Shire a little bit later this week because I kind of want to do more of an in-depth profile on him. But as we talk about him on the fly, I'd like to move. Still in his mid-20s, still a really good player. In a larger role with Tennessee, he was able to show that he can be a legitimate starting backer in this league. He was a little bit overshadowed by Fred Warner, as well as Dre Greenlaw. And this year in Tennessee, I thought he was flying around. I think he has really good instincts. He has really good speed, still has a relationship with a lot of players on this Niners team in that linebacking room, because during a pregame in the playoffs, he was on the field with the Niners linebacking crew. Overall Pro Football Focus grade this year of 64.7, run defense grade of 73.7. He'll shoot the gap and he'll diagnose the run. A coverage grade of 61.3, which isn't great, but when you're playing alongside Fred Warner, your job is going to be made a little bit easier. And the only issue with re-signing Azeez Al-Shaair, another team might be able to give him and might pay him a lot more money than what the Niners can afford. John Edwards, $5 Super Chat. He's become a sneaky Super Chat legend here over the last month and change. The Niners should go after L'Jarius Sneed in free agency, just like they brought in Dion to win the Super Bowl. And that's why on the show today, we were talking about a Patrick Surtain trade. So you weigh, do you give up a first, second, and third for Patrick Surtain, or do you sign L'Jarius Sneed for, let's say, about in the realm of what you gave Charvarius Ward, which was $14 million for Sneed? It might be a little bit more. Sneed really came on this year. He started his career as a slot corner. He's kind of developed into a lockdown perimeter wideout. Thought he did a really good job against Deebo Samuel and Brandon Ayuk in the Super Bowl. Really good instincts. He had 14 pass breakups this year. That's a player who, if the Niners want to invest at corner and they want to pay big-time dollars for a corner, he's the cream of the crop, really, in this free agency class. Dude, $2 Super Chat. Bobby Wagner is available. How about a cheaper linebacker who could make a lot of sense? Dude, I appreciate you bringing him up. At some point, I do have it scheduled to do like an affordable free agent target segment on the Niners Report. Bobby Wagner would be a great option. Not as much as Azeez Al-Shaair, a little bit older, so he's not going to break the bank, but a player who's still playing really, really well, and who Fred Warner has just applauded as being a fantastic player. As we know, he wreaked havoc against the Niners for so long when he was playing with Seattle and the Rams. Lore, what position should we look at in the draft and free agency? Lore, I'm telling you this right now. You got to lock down right guard, and you got to lock down right tackle. And I don't know if it's going to happen in the draft or free agency. Free agency comes first. So if they don't address right guard and right tackle in free agency, they have to. And I mean, they have to do it in the draft. The fact that we were talking about a team that was weak at offensive line after last year, did not draft an offensive lineman at all in all 7 rounds this past year, is criminal. You drafted 2 tight ends and a kicker in the 3rd round, and you didn't pick up an offensive lineman? Not good. And it's cost you your season back-to-back years, partially. AJ VHS, what up, brother? What's up with the Staley hype? Not big on him. What's our in-house hiring candidate? So I get why people have cooled on Brandon Staley. He was a disaster as the head coach of the Chargers, but Brandon Staley was excellent in his lone season as defensive coordinator for the Rams, and he's respected by Sean McVay. He's very well respected by Kyle Shanahan. They're said to be close. And in his lone season as the Rams DC, #1 scoring defense, #1 pass defense, #1 in yards allowed, #3 run defense. So he is a pretty good defensive coordinator. Some coaches are meant to be coordinators, and I think Brandon Staley fits under that. Now, what I would do, Bill Belichick all day, every day. I'm at least giving him a call, but I'm not sure the Niners are going to go that bold of a route. What New to 187, have you looked at the draft class this year? Who do you like? Yeah, I've looked at the draft a little bit. Going to do a mock draft here soon. There's a couple of offensive linemen who I really liked, and we talked about some of the offensive linemen on the show last week when we were talking about the perfect Niners offseason that I drew up. You can get a really quality right tackle at 31. You can get a really quality right guard at 31. It just kind of depends what position you want to hone in on. The right tackle who's getting a lot of buzz, who could be available at 31, is Darius Mims out of Georgia. That's a player who I really like. Didn't play a lot with Georgia, but played in some big-time moments and has the athletic pedigree, only 21 years old. How about them Niners? Do you see any second-year players breaking out? I love how the Niner guy in the profile picture is taking a leak on the Cowboys logo. That's just fantastic stuff right there. How about them Cowboys? Second-year players making a leap. So if they don't address linebacker and they don't sign an Azeez Al-Shire or a Bobby Wagner, as we talked about here on the show, D. Winters, Jalen Graham, they could be your breakout candidates in year 2. Look, I know Jake Moody gets a lot of shit for missing the PAT. It was a crucial miss. But how about him knocking down a 55 and 51-yarder in the Super Bowl? It's big-time stuff. So maybe he becomes a little bit more consistent. Elsewhere, I don't see anything from Cam Latu. I don't see anything from Braden Willis. I'm not really high on those players. That's pretty much it. Like, that draft class last year could end up hurting San Francisco. I'll take another look at it right now. But year 2 players breaking out. I'm really excited. I'll say this. I'm really excited about the future safety tandem of Jair Brown-Talanoa Hufanga. I said that a couple of times here on the show, but I can't wait to see what Brown's able to do with the full season under his belt. What can Darryl Luter Jr. do? He's only known for the ball bouncing off his foot in the Super Bowl, so we'll see about that. Can you get anything out of Robert Beal Jr., twitchy edge rusher out of Georgia, who you took in the 5th round? Big Hurt, $5 super chat. Chris Kiffin is the best choice for defensive coordinator. Bring him back home. Chris Kiffin. That's the first time I've really heard his name. Let's see. Chris Kiffin. Previously served as an assistant coach for the Browns. Linebackers coach for the Houston Texans in 2023. Defensive line coach for the Browns 20 to 2022. Pass rush specialist coach for the Niners in 2018-2019. As we know, that 2019 year was really, really special. Haven't heard that name. I don't think that he's worthy of being a DC, but as an assistant, D'Amico Ryans obviously liked him. Make sure you subscribe to the show like Big Hurt is to be a real one and to get your questions answered right here on the show. Thanks to everybody for your continued support. You're all the best.